defensive line depth isn't one of those sexy subjects that you put in your headline, whether it's for a podcast or a column or whatever. This isn't what the cool kids refer to as clickbait. It's defensive line depth. But I can promise you, I'm going to make it worth your while to stick all the way through this one. Good morning to you. Good Wednesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Armon Watts is a name you don't care about. You might never have heard it, despite being so invested in this football team that you pressed play on a podcast with this title. You did that, not me. Armon Watts is a guy who is seen in an almost reverential context on the inside. Interior defensive line play is not for the faint of heart, and it's definitely not for the faint of knowledge, of football knowledge. I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm watching when I see it. I don't pass myself off as an expert on interior line play from either side. And candidly, I'm not sure how anyone could, short of having played the game. There's so many. It's not just intricacies and it's not just tricks. It's not just positioning. It's not just brute strength. It's the combination of all of that plus the guile to understand when you've won and the other individual has lost, even when it might not appear that way. So the way I end around on this stuff is I just walk up to the players and ask them what they see. And what they see when Watts is out there is someone who has a world of potential. Now, why haven't we heard his name? Why haven't I talked about him? Well, he didn't get on the field much, which you can immediately stop this conversation and say, all right, so why are we talking about him? He couldn't even get onto the field. He couldn't even get a hat for some games, right? But he's behind Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, and a very promising, also, Keanu Benton. When I look at this defensive line, I probably think the same first thought that you do, which is, man, they need to get their next Cam. They need to continue that Joe Green lineage and make sure that the Steelers are always proud at that position. And then getting, more tactical in it. What they really need out of that D-line is more penetration. They need more guys making it to the backfield. And that's where I'm going to bring up not one, but two names, two guys who could play a bigger role in 2024 and arguably should. One is Watts, since I just mentioned him. He's 27 years old. He wins on the inside. He'll occasionally get to the back. He'll seal the run from any spot on the line, and he'll make enough of an impact within his own battle to free up space for the other guys that are on the line. He will get off his blocks, which is what Cam is always admonishing his fellow D-line guys to do more than anything else. Get off your blocks. Get off your blocks. Watts will do that. And he needs to be allowed to do that, not just for his own performance, but also because Cam's really, getting pretty old. This is mid-30s now. And Larry Ogunjobi hasn't been healthy the entire time he's been with the Steelers, but he's gutted it out and he's continued to make plays. They need to be spelled during games. They need to be spelled as part of a rotation. I believe Watts can make some of that difference. The other guy, and he's only a year older, though it feels like he's been around forever, and that's Montravius Adams. Talk about a player that doesn't get enough recognition, even from the Steelers' own fan base. Mon Adams gets after it. Mon Adams is out there making plays, and he will get to the backfield, not just against the quarterback. He'll tackle a running back for loss. He'll throw guys off of their intended routes. He'll blow up an intended screen pass. But above all, if you remember the dire circumstances in which Mon Adams was acquired, it was after that debacle in Minneapolis. And speaking of Mean Joe, the one that Mr. Green had to come out himself and rip the organization for whenever Dalvin Cook just went berserk. Mon Adams is a pretty good football player. Now, I'm not going to change course on still wanting a defensive lineman, an interior defensive lineman of impact. I would love to picture this football team with this defense going forward, if not necessarily in 2024, but in 2025 or beyond, with like a Calais Campbell type, somebody who's just a monster in the middle that the other team has to commit extra resources to stop. Now, I'd love to say that's going to be Cam for one big, glorious comeback year where he shows everybody that it was the groin and nothing else. I want that, okay? I'm not even going to throw in a but after that. But I don't know that I did it. I don't know that it's going to happen. And as a result, I feel it's necessary for the Steelers to have plans B and C on the inside, but also utilized. That's the main thing. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's show is sponsored by the Poker Room at Live Casino Pittsburgh. Join them this month for the daily hand hustle promotion where the first 20 hands will win up to $200. Don't miss the Westmoreland 300 Multi-Flight Poker Tournament. That's March 7th through the 10th with a $25,000 guaranteed prize pool. Plus, join live for an $8,000 cash drawing on March 24th at noon. Follow them on X at LivePokerWML. Again, that's at LivePokerWML. Live Casino Pittsburgh, located on Route 30 at the Westmoreland Mall.
Today's J1Q comes from Tim, who says, "Hey DK, I appreciated the Tuesday episode on Minka Fitzpatrick. It's obvious that you think he's a pivotal part of the defense. My question is, what's his pass rush win rate? We all know that's the only stat that matters." You know, I know that you're kidding, and I appreciate the sense of humor that goes into that. I'm also grateful for any opportunity to underscore that Minka, maybe even more than TJ, and I say that respectfully, is about so much more than his baseline statistics. And you know, I'll occasionally question, and I don't have a problem with doing this, and I don't apologize for it, what seems like conventional wisdom among the fan base. I'll say, look, everybody seems to be lining up behind this, but what you don't know is this. So at least factor this into your thinking. I don't say that you're wrong. I don't suggest that, you know less or whatever else here. I'll share some information that I might have and hope that it helps you to come to your own conclusion. But this is one of those where I think Steelers Nation really can be a shining light in circumstances like judging Minka. Yeah, occasionally you're going to have the dummy who says, "Where is his interceptions? He hasn't had one in 4 games," as if he can control that, as if he's running around out there with a giant Wile E. Coyote-looking magnet to bring the football his way. But if you watch Minka, and if you have even a peripheral understanding of this great game, you will appreciate him so much more than you could from just watching, a given event. As if, just sitting there with the remote on a Sunday with some chips and dip. If you isolate on what 39 does back there and the efficiency with which he executes it and the detrimental effect that he has on the other team's quarterback and thus their entire offense, man, you'd know why everybody sings about him who's inside football. You'd know why he's considered to be, by a lot of people, the very best at what he does in the National Football League. Was he rusty in Buffalo? Sure. Should he have played in Buffalo? Probably not. Did he make any kind of excuses for it? Did he probably get himself shot up to oblivion just to get out there? I'm kind of guessing that he did. But when you see the skill, the smarts with which he operates, and then add on to it, let me ask you a question. Do you remember the game that Minka had to open the 2022 season? This was in Cincinnati, the one where they just obliterated Joe Burrow in the opening half. Remember that? He got sacked 7 times or something, a couple of picks and whatever else. Do you remember what Minka did in that game? If you are football starved right now, and I'll remind that you're the one that pressed play on a podcast with this title, find a way to watch that game and do nothing other than to concentrate on 39 as much as your selected version of that game will allow. You're in for a treat and a half, because the other thing about Minka that stands out for me and has stood out from the day he arrived in Santa Clara, California, and made that immediate impact against the 49ers out there, the highest praise I ever offer to a Steeler, and this is just me, so it doesn't count for anything more or less than that, I'm just me, is that they're an AFC North type of player. You could see that in Minka on day one. He just wrecked the Bengals that day out there. They had no answer for him. I'm not even talking about his coverage or, his scariness for the quarterback. I'm talking about just physically destroying them. This is not the biggest man in the room. He didn't care. He put himself on the line. And after that game, in that locker room, he sat there at his stall. And this was probably for about 10 or 15 minutes before he took any questions from anybody. Still, what's the word for this? Trembling, but not out of fear, okay? Just trembling because he was still so amped up from everything that had just gone on out there. Just a special, special player. Don't lose sight of that because of the injuries that he had just now. So you can tell I'm just always so stoked to have an opportunity to talk about Minka. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.